You can't be serious, Juno. It's just electricity and water. Why are you being so cheap about this? Madeline's voice came through my phone with an accusatory edge that made me wince. Family helps family. You know I would do the same for you. Would you, though? I challenged, pacing across my apartment in Seattle. Because when I needed a place to stay during that conference last year, you said your guest room was being renovated. That was different, she countered. We actually were renovating. For 6 months? Look, it's not like you can't afford it. You're single with no kids and that tech job pays you ridiculous money. Meanwhile, I'm supporting a family of 5 on a teacher's salary. I took a deep breath. Madeline, it's not about affording it. The cabin costs me over $2,000 a month in mortgage, insurance, taxes, and regular maintenance. You're asking to use it for 3 weeks without contributing anything. It's sitting empty anyway, she exclaimed. What difference does it make if we're there or not? The bills still exist. You're seriously going to nickel and dime your own sister. My name is Juno Reynolds, 29 years old, and the proud owner of a cabin on Lake Chelan in Washington State. I purchased it last year after saving for nearly a decade, a personal achievement I'm immensely proud of. What I want is simple: to enjoy my vacation property on my terms and to have my boundaries respected by my family. Standing in my way is my older sister Madeline, who seems to believe that my possessions are community property, particularly when it benefits her. I'm not nickel and diming you, I said firmly. I'm asking you to contribute to the utilities you'll be using. That's completely reasonable. Mom and Dad think you're being ridiculous too, Madeline replied, playing her trump card. That gave me pause. You've already talked to them about this? Of course I have. They agree that this isn't how family treats family. I felt a familiar knot forming in my stomach. Madeline had always been expert at rallying our parents to her side in any dispute. As the oldest, with 3 kids and a perpetually tight budget, she had perfected the art of positioning herself as the struggling underdog, worthy of everyone's support and accommodation. We'll talk more later, I said, not wanting to escalate things further without collecting my thoughts. I need to get back to work. Fine, she huffed, but this conversation isn't over. After hanging up, I checked my email and felt my heart sink. There was a message from my property management company about the cabin, with the subject line, Urgent Water Damage Report. Apparently there had been a small leak in the utility room during the last heavy rain. Nothing catastrophic, but it would need immediate repair. The estimate attached was for $3,500, money I hadn't budgeted for this month. As I stared at the figure, I couldn't help but think about Madeline's demand that I foot the bill for her 3-week family vacation, while also covering unexpected expenses like this. Something had to give, and for once, it wasn't going to be me. Growing up as the youngest of 4 siblings in a middle-class household in Washington State taught me the importance of both self-reliance and resourcefulness. Our parents, while loving, had stretched finances with multiple children, so I learned early to save for what I wanted and work for what I needed. By 16, I had 3 jobs: bagging groceries after school, tutoring on weekends, and mowing lawns in the summer. Every dollar went into my someday fund. Madeline took a different path. 5 years my senior, she married young to her high school boyfriend Louis, had 3 kids in quick succession, and settled into the role of struggling but virtuous mother. She was a dedicated elementary school teacher, and I genuinely admired her commitment to education and her children. But there had always been an assumption that her choices were somehow more noble than mine, and therefore more deserving of family support. Juno's doing great, our mother would say, but Madeline is raising the next generation. That's the real work. So it became a pattern. Madeline needed help with childcare, so I would drive 2 hours on weekends to babysit. Madeline's car broke down, so our parents lent her money they could ill afford. Madeline wanted family photos, so I, with my expensive camera hobby, was expected to provide professional quality portraits for free. I never minded helping. Not really. Family matters to me. But the reciprocity that should exist between siblings never materialized. When I needed anything, There was always a reason why Madeline couldn't help. The kids were sick, Louis was working overtime. They were just so stretched thin right now. The cabin represented my breaking free from this dynamic. I had saved diligently for years, working overtime and investing carefully. When I found the property on Lake Chelan, a modest 2-bedroom with a stunning view of the water, I knew it was meant to be mine. My siblings had reacted with varying degrees of enthusiasm when I announced the purchase. "That's awesome," my brother Jason had said sincerely. "Seems excessive for one person," my sister Grace had remarked. "I can't wait to visit," Madeline had exclaimed, already making plans. I hadn't thought much about that last comment at the time. Of course my family would visit occasionally. I wanted to share the joy of this special place with them. What I hadn't anticipated was Madeline's assumption that my second home would become her family's free vacation spot whenever they wanted it. The first time she asked, I happily agreed. It was winter break, and they stayed for 5 days. When they left, I discovered broken dishes, stained towels, and heating bills triple the usual amount. Madeline brushed off my concerns. Kids will be kids. And it's just stuff, Juno. The second time, I hesitated, but eventually said yes. The pattern repeated. Messes left. Costs incurred. No acknowledgement of the imposition. Now, facing her third request, this time for a full 3 weeks in the height of summer, something in me balked. I loved my sister, but a growing suspicion had taken root that her version of family helps family only flowed in one direction. The next evening, my parents called. I knew exactly what it was about before I even answered. "Juno, honey," my mother began in that placating tone she reserved for family disputes. "We need to talk about this situation with Madeline and the cabin." I sighed. "Mom, I'm just asking her to contribute to the utilities while they're there. It's not unreasonable." "She says you're asking for rent," my father chimed in, his voice tinged with disapproval. "I'm not," I clarified. "I'm asking her to cover the utilities they'll use during their 3-week stay. The electric bill alone will be substantial with 5 people running the air conditioning in July." "But you'd be paying those bills whether they were there or not," my mother countered, echoing Madeline's argument. "That's not true," I explained patiently. "The baseline costs are low when no one's there. It's the usage that drives up the bills." There was a pause, then my father spoke again. "Juno, we raised you to be generous with family. Madeline doesn't have the financial flexibility you do. Her kids have been looking forward to this vacation for months." The implication was clear. I was being selfish, prioritizing money over my niece's and nephew's happiness. "I understand that," I said, trying to keep frustration from creeping into my voice. "But I just got hit with a $3,500 repair bill for water damage at the cabin. I have financial limitations too." "Well," my mother said, her tone shifting to something almost conspiratorial. "Madeline did mention she thought you might try to use money problems as an excuse. She showed us your Instagram post about your new paddle boards." I felt a flash of heat rise to my face. Yes, I had purchased 2 paddle boards last month, on sale, with money I had specifically saved for cabin recreation equipment. That Madeline had used this against me, presenting it to our parents as evidence of frivolous spending while I cried poor, felt like a betrayal. "I'm not using money as an excuse," I said firmly. "I'm setting a reasonable boundary." "Family shouldn't have boundaries like that," my father replied. "When you were in college, did we charge you rent during summer breaks?" "No, but..." "And when you needed help with the down payment for your first apartment, who lent you the security deposit?" my mother added. "You did, and I paid it back with interest," I reminded her. "That's not the point," she dismissed. "The point is family helps family." As the conversation continued, a sinking feeling grew in my stomach. This wasn't just about the cabin anymore. It was about a fundamental disagreement on what family obligation meant. In their view, my success obligated me to subsidize Madeline's choices without question or limit. The final blow came as we were hanging up. "By the way," my mother added casually, "Madeline already told the kids they're going to the cabin. They're so excited about swimming in the lake. It would be cruel to disappoint them now. I sat in stunned silence after the call ended. My sister had backed me into a corner, using my nieces and nephews as emotional leverage. She'd already promised them the vacation, knowing I'd be positioned as the villain if I refused. Worse, I'd just received a text from my brother Jason. "Heads up, Madeline's been in the family group chat, the one you're not in, asking if anyone wants to join them at your cabin for the 4th of July weekend. She's inviting extended family too." A group chat I wasn't included in? Extended family I hadn't approved? This had gone beyond taking advantage. This was Madeline actively undermining my ownership, treating my property as a communal resource she controlled. For the first time, I allowed myself to acknowledge what I'd long suspected. This pattern wouldn't change unless I forced it to. The question was how to stand my ground without fracturing the family entirely. The next morning, I called Madeline directly, determined to address the situation head-on. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice cautious. "Hey, Juno. If this is about the cabin, Mom and Dad already talked to me about your financial concerns." I took a breath, centering myself. "Actually, I'm calling because Jason told me you've been inviting extended family to my cabin without asking me." A pause. "It's just Aunt Patty and Uncle Dave. They haven't had a proper vacation in years, and I thought—" "That's not your decision to make," I interrupted. "The cabin is my property, Madeline. You need to ask me before inviting anyone else." "Why are you being so possessive?" she shot back. "It's just family." "It's not about being possessive, it's about respect. And speaking of respect, Jason also mentioned a family group chat that I'm not part of." Another pause, longer this time. "Oh, that. It's nothing personal. Just a chat for coordinating kid stuff. You don't have children, so we didn't think you'd be interested." The explanation felt hollow, especially given what Jason had revealed about the chat's content. But I decided to focus on the immediate issue. "Look, I've given this a lot of thought. I'm happy for your family to use the cabin, but there need to be some ground rules. First, you'll need to cover the utilities during your stay. Second, no inviting additional guests without my permission. And third, I'll need you to put down a security deposit to cover any potential damages." Madeline's laugh was sharp and disbelieving. "A security deposit? Are you kidding me? We're not some random renters off the street. We're family." "Family who left broken dishes and stained towels the last 2 times, I pointed out. "Accidents happen. You're seriously going to nickel and dime your own nieces and nephews?" "I'm asking for basic respect for my property," I countered. "This is non-negotiable, Madeline. Either agree to these terms or find somewhere else to stay for your vacation." There was a moment of stunned silence, then Madeline's voice turned cold. "You know what? Fine. I'll work out the details with you, but I want you to know that this is incredibly hurtful. I would never treat you this way." I bit back the retort that she had never been in a position to offer me anything comparable. "I'll email you the details," I said instead, keeping my tone neutral. After hanging up, I felt a strange mixture of guilt and liberation. Standing up to Madeline wasn't comfortable, but it was necessary. I spent the afternoon drafting a straightforward agreement outlining my expectations. A utility fee based on average increased costs during occupancy, a reasonable deposit to be returned after inspection, and clear guidelines about additional guests and property care. The email was factual and businesslike, with no emotional language. I hesitated before hitting send, wondering if I was overreacting. Then I remembered the water damage bill, the stained towels, the broken dishes, and the years of one-sided family helps family expectations. I pressed send. Madeline's response came within minutes. "Is this a joke? You're sending me a rental agreement for a family visit? I can't believe you're being this petty. Wait until Mom and Dad see this." I had anticipated this reaction, but still felt my stomach clench. The next salvo came just an hour later, a group text from my mother to all 4 siblings. "Family dinner this Sunday at our house, 5 p.m. Everyone must attend. We need to discuss some concerning developments." My brother Jason texted me privately right after. Madeline showed them the agreement. They're furious. Dad called it a disgraceful way to treat family. Just giving you a heads up. My sister Grace chimed in with her own private message. Standing your ground, huh? About time. I'll back you up on Sunday, but brace yourself. It's going to be ugly. I felt a flicker of hope at Grace's support. Maybe I wasn't alone in feeling the imbalance in our family dynamics. Still, the prospect of Sunday's confrontation filled me with dread. I'd challenged the established order. Madeline asks, everyone accommodates. And the backlash would be significant. That night, as I reviewed my property insurance policy to ensure the water damage repair would be covered, I received one more text from Louis, Madeline's husband. Madeline's really upset about this cabin thing. She's been crying all evening. I know you two have your issues, but the kids are devastated about possibly missing their lake vacation. Can't you work something out? For the kids' sake? Emotional manipulation from yet another angle. I turned off my phone without responding, more certain than ever that I needed to hold firm. Sunday arrived with the weight of impending confrontation. I spent the morning hiking to clear my head, then drove to my parents' suburban Olympia home with a strange calm. Whatever happened, I wouldn't back down on this issue. It was too important, not just for my finances, but for resetting long-established patterns in our family. When I arrived, the tension was palpable. My father gave me a curt nod, my mother a tight-lipped smile. Madeline wouldn't meet my eyes. Only Jason and Grace greeted me normally, with Jason offering a subtle thumbs-up of encouragement. Dinner was a painfully quiet affair, with conversation limited to safe topics like the weather and my nephew's baseball team. It wasn't until dessert that my father cleared his throat and addressed the elephant in the room. "We need to talk about this cabin situation," he announced. "Madeline showed us the contract you sent her." He practically spat the word contract as if it were obscene. "It's a standard agreement," I replied calmly. "Nothing unreasonable." "It's cold and formal," my mother interjected. "This is your sister, not some stranger from the internet." "That's exactly why I need clear boundaries," I explained. "Because our history makes this complicated." "Boundaries?" Madeline finally spoke, her voice trembling with either genuine or performative emotion. I couldn't tell which. "Since when does family need formal boundaries? We've always helped each other." I took a deep breath. Have we? Have we really helped each other equally? An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. "What's that supposed to mean?" my father asked. "It means," I said carefully, "that family helps family has mostly meant everyone accommodating Madeline, with little reciprocity." "That's not fair," Madeline protested. "I have 3 children and a teacher's salary. You're single with a tech job." "And I've worked extremely hard for everything I have," I countered, "including that cabin which represents years of saving and sacrifice." My mother shook her head. "No one's denying your hard work, Juno. But surely you can see that Madeline's needs are greater than mine," I finished. "That's always the assumption, isn't it? That because I don't have children, my needs, my boundaries, my property are somehow less important?" Before anyone could respond, Grace unexpectedly spoke up. "Juno's right." All eyes turned to her in surprise. "I've never said anything because I didn't want to cause problems," she continued. "But Madeline, you do take advantage. You borrowed my car for just a weekend last year and kept it for 2 weeks. You've asked me to watch your kids at the last minute dozens of times, but when I needed help moving, you were too busy." Madeline looked genuinely shocked. That's not true." "It is," Jason added quietly. "You've done the same to me. Remember when you borrowed my camping equipment for your family trip and returned it damaged? You never offered to pay for repairs." I hadn't expected this show of solidarity from my siblings. The family dynamics I'd thought were invisible to everyone but me were apparently obvious to Jason and Grace as well. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. Then, in a moment that truly stunned me, my father turned to Madeline and asked, "Is this true?" "Of course not. They're ganging up on me because—" Madeline trailed off, unable to complete the accusation. My mother, looking troubled, reached for her phone. After a moment of scrolling, she looked up with an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of disappointment and realization. Madeline, I just checked our joint calendar. In the past year, we've watched your children 27 times. We've lent you money on 8 occasions. We've helped you move, repair your car, and even paid your electric bill when it was past due. She paused. How many times have you helped your siblings or us in that same period? The question hung in the air, unanswered. I have children, Madeline repeated weakly. It's different. Is it? My father asked, his voice softer now. We raised all 4 of you to support each other. But support should go both ways, shouldn't it? I sat back, processing this unexpected shift. For the first time, my parents were seeing the imbalance that had defined our family relationships for years. And judging by Madeline's expression, a mixture of defensiveness and dawning awareness, she was seeing it too. The conversation had taken a turn I never could have predicted. This wasn't just about my cabin anymore. It was about a fundamental re-examination of how our family functioned, and who bore the burdens of family helps family. The week following the family dinner passed in tense silence. No one called me, not even Jason or Grace. I wondered if their moment of solidarity had dissolved under pressure from our parents or Madeline, who had stormed out of the dinner in tears after being confronted with the reality of her one-sided expectations. I went about my routine, working, visiting the cabin to supervise the water damage repairs, and trying not to obsess over the family conflict. I stood by my decision to require the agreement, but I couldn't help questioning whether I should have approached the situation differently. Had I been too harsh? Too businesslike? By Friday, I still hadn't heard from Madeline regarding the cabin. July was approaching rapidly, and I needed to know whether to block off those 3 weeks on my calendar or make my own plans for the property. I decided to text her directly. Madeline, I need to know if you still want to use the cabin in July. If so, we need to finalize the agreement. If not, that's fine. Just let me know so I can make other arrangements. No response. On Saturday morning, I was at the cabin overseeing the installation of a new water heater when my phone rang. It was my mother. Juno, she began, her voice carefully neutral. We've been talking as a family about this situation, and we'd like to have another meeting tomorrow. Would you be willing to come? Is this an ambush? I asked cautiously. No, she assured me. It's a genuine attempt to work things out. Your father and I have been doing some reflecting and, well, we'd like everyone to talk openly. I agreed, with some trepidation. That night, I prepared myself mentally for various scenarios, from capitulation to confrontation. Whatever happened, I was committed to maintaining my boundaries while remaining open to reasonable compromise. The next day, I arrived at my parents' house to find everyone already gathered. My parents, Jason, Grace, and Madeline, who looked subdued but not hostile. Louis was notably absent. Thank you for coming, my father began once we were all seated. We've been having some difficult conversations this week about family dynamics and expectations. Madeline has something she'd like to say. Madeline looked up, her expression a mixture of embarrassment and resignation. I've been thinking about what everyone said last week. At first, I was angry and hurt, but I've started to see that maybe I have been taking advantage. She paused. I'm not saying I've been doing it intentionally, but the pattern is there. I nodded, surprised and cautiously hopeful. About the cabin, she continued, I understand now why you wanted the agreement. It's your property, and you have every right to set conditions for its use. Thank you for saying that, I replied sincerely. But, Madeline added, I still can't afford to pay what you're asking. The utility deposit and security deposit together are more than we've budgeted for our entire vacation. I was about to respond when my father interjected. That's where we wanted to propose a solution, he said. Your mother and I will cover the security deposit for Madeline's family. It seems fair since we've enabled some of these imbalanced expectations over the years. I considered this. That would help, but there's still the issue of property respect. The last 2 times they stayed, things were damaged and not reported. I've talked to Lewis and the kids about that, Madeline said. We've agreed to be more careful and to replace or repair anything that gets damaged. It was a start, but words alone weren't enough after years of established patterns. I pulled out my tablet, where I'd prepared a simplified version of my original agreement. I've revised the terms, I explained. The utility fee is calculated based on actual historical increases, not estimates. The security deposit is lower, and I've added a detailed checkout list so there's no confusion about expectations. I passed the tablet around, watching as everyone reviewed the document. It was still a formal agreement, but with more reasonable terms and clearer explanations of the rationale behind each requirement. This seems fair, Grace commented. Actually, I'd like a copy of this for when I let people use my beach condo. Jason nodded. Same for my boat. It's good to have clear expectations. My mother looked thoughtful. I think we've all learned something important here about boundaries and respect within a family. Madeline took the tablet last, reading carefully. After a long moment, she looked up. I understand why you needed this now, and I apologize for how I've treated your property before. It wasn't a complete resolution. True change would take time and consistency, but it was a significant step forward. As we continued talking, a new complication emerged. Madeline hadn't told Lewis or the children about the uncertainty of their vacation plans. They were still fully expecting to use the cabin, with Lewis having already requested the time off work. I was hoping it would all just work out, Madeline admitted. This revelation threatened to undermine our progress. I had to decide. Stand absolutely firm on the principle, potentially punishing the children for their mother's poor planning, or find a workable compromise that maintained my boundaries, while allowing for a transition to the new expectations. 7 days after presenting Madeline with the formal rental agreement, I received a text message from her that simply read, "Can we talk about the cabin, in person?" I suggested meeting at a coffee shop near my apartment, neutral territory where we could speak privately. When Madeline arrived, I was struck by her demeanor, subdued and almost nervous, without her usual confidence. "Thank you for meeting me," she began, fidgeting with her coffee cup. "I want to talk about your terms for using the cabin." I nodded, waiting for her to continue. "At first, I was upset and angry about the agreement," she admitted. "It felt so impersonal. But after our family meeting and seeing how everyone, even Mom and Dad, agreed with you, I've been doing a lot of thinking." She pulled a folder from her bag and placed it on the table between us. "I've signed your agreement, all of it. The utility fees, the security deposit, the rules about additional guests, and I've also added something." Curious, I opened the folder. Inside was my agreement with her signature, along with a handwritten letter. "It's an apology," she explained as I began reading, "for taking advantage of your generosity, for not respecting your property, and for using the kids as emotional leverage. I've also included a check to cover the damages from our previous stays that I never properly addressed." I glanced at the check. $350, a fair estimate of the costs I'd absorbed from their earlier visits. "This is unexpected," I said honestly. "I talked to Lewis and the kids," Madeline continued. "We had a family meeting of our own. I explained that Aunt Juno's cabin isn't a free hotel, and that we need to treat it, and you, with more respect. The kids actually suggested doing chores around the property during our stay to help earn their keep." She looked at me directly, her expression sincere. I've never had to face the pattern of my behavior before. Everyone always accommodated me because of the kids, because we're always struggling financially. But that doesn't make it right to take advantage of my family, especially you. The shift was remarkable. Not just the acknowledgement of past behavior, but the concrete actions to change it. For the first time in our adult relationship, Madeline was treating me as an equal, whose boundaries deserved respect. "Thank you," I said, feeling a complex mixture of vindication and reconciliation. "I appreciate this, Madeline. Truly." Madeline's family did use the cabin that July. The difference in how they treated the property was immediately noticeable. Clean dishes, folded linens, a meticulously followed checkout procedure. My nieces and nephews had even left me a thank you card with a hand-drawn picture of the cabin. More significant than the state of the cabin, however, was the shift in our family dynamics. Our parents, now aware of the imbalance they had enabled, began setting their own boundaries. When Madeline asked them to watch the kids the following month, they declined because they had already made plans with Grace. It was a small change, but a meaningful one. At our Labor Day family barbecue, I overheard Madeline offer to help Jason move into his new apartment, volunteering without being asked. Later, she approached me with a tentative smile. "I was wondering if we could work out a system for the cabin for next summer," she said. "Maybe we could trade some weekends. You watch the kids one weekend, we get the cabin another. An actual exchange, not just you giving and me taking." "I'd like that," I replied, surprised but pleased. My father, overhearing, nodded approvingly. "The cabin situation ended up being good for all of us," he remarked. "Made us take a hard look at some patterns we'd fallen into." My mother joined the conversation. "I've been thinking about this family helps family idea," she admitted. "It's supposed to mean everyone supporting each other in different ways, not one person always giving and others always taking." Grace raised her glass in a small toast. "To healthy boundaries and real reciprocity." We all clinked glasses, even Madeline, who added quietly, "And to Juno for having the courage to enforce them first." I smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the summer sun. Standing up for myself had been difficult and uncomfortable, but it had catalyzed an important transformation in our family. The cabin agreement had exposed underlying issues that everyone had felt but no one had addressed. As I looked around at my family, engaged in genuine give and take rather than one-sided expectations, I realized that true family support wasn't about unconditional accommodation. It was about mutual respect, clear boundaries, and balanced reciprocity. The cabin was still my private sanctuary, a symbol of my independence and achievement. But now it was also something more, the catalyst for a healthier, more equitable family dynamic that benefited everyone, including Madeline. "Next time," Madeline said, interrupting my thoughts, "we'll bring our own paddleboards." I laughed, recognizing her comment for what it was, an acknowledgement that enjoying my property didn't mean being entitled to everything in it. "Or," I suggested, "maybe we could go paddleboarding together sometime." Madeline smiled, a real smile with no hint of entitlement or expectation. "I'd like that," she said. "I really would."